with Carolina, but we know the resurgence of the LA Kings has been really, really good, and it's only going to get better from here. So to speak upon that, here for Los Angeles, Eddie Garcia joins us on the show. Well, Eddie, I mean, the NHL free agency has just been fiery hot, and I love every minute of it. What has been kind of going through your mind and watching a lot of these other teams make deals, make trades? I know that the only thing that's been kind of more of the curveball has been kind of more of the coaching situation towards the end. Because some of these coaching hires, like, I mean, I loved what New York did getting Mike Sullivan and a couple of others that just fit the scheme. And watching this whole free agency, it's like an absolute just wild party because we're only seeing right now some of these contracts only going to get much more expensive. And now that we have the new 4-year deal with the CBA, I mean, are we going to at some point expect the next $20 million a year hockey player at some point?
Certainly, yeah, it's trending that way. Connor McDavid needs a new contract after this coming season, so he will be the highest paid player in the NHL very, very soon. A little bit interesting, the Oilers have obviously lost 2 straight years in the Stanley Cup final. I think, his exit press conference, with the media after the season ended, he didn't, there were no threats there, but he was kind of like, yeah, I'm going to take my time. We'll see what happens. And I think he's just kind of flexing his muscles a little bit, saying, I'm frustrated with the way the season has ended the last couple of years. I want to make sure that this organization is committed to getting a championship. And I want to make sure that everything's to my liking before I decide to sign a long-term deal with the Oilers. So maybe he signs like a 4-year deal and then they go through this again in a few years and then he can reevaluate where they've been. And maybe the best player in the game, arguably the best player in the game, decides time to go try something else. So we'll see, but it's approaching that way. The salary cap's going to go up each year over the next 4 years. The business of hockey is doing very well right now. It's great to have a labor peace because I've been a fan long enough. There's been work stoppages and losing a season, and that's something that's obviously the worst case scenario. So hockey's healthy right now. They're probably going to have expansion here at some point in the next couple of years, whether you like that or not. But again, the business of hockey is doing pretty good, and it's having a trickle-down effect to the players and the contracts.
So it is interesting because this past season, I mean, the Western Conference, a lot of these teams, you got your Vegas, your Winnipegs, and then even when you look at the Dallas Stars, and the LA Kings, I mean, I've watched them for years, and covering this team is, winning the 2 Stanley Cups from 12 and 14, and for as good as they've been, with offense, defense, but we know that the Western Conference, and even with what I've seen up in free agency, it seems like I kind of have a lock of the Eastern Conference, but with the West, I'm getting multitude of teams. So it's like, watching the LA Kings and finishing up second in the Pacific, and what they're building right now as an entire contribution for just their youth, the youth movement. And then at the same time, Anze Kopitar, Drew Doughty, and multiple others that are really helping out for this youth core. I mean, the Kings, they really are willing to be competitive. And at the same time, they want to be up and in the same plateau as all of these other teams in the Western Conference. So I think it's just like they're making the deals, and then they definitely want to compete with a lot of these top teams here in the Western Conference, right?
Well, there's no doubt that that's what they want to do, and that's the goal. Right now, though, I don't know that they have the top-end horses to really be able to compete, even in their division. I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit more, but Mitch Marner was the top prize free agent this year. He is in a sign and trade, comes to Vegas. So now they got Vegas with Mitch Marner and Jack Eichel. Obviously, the Oilers have been a huge thorn in the side of the LA Kings, beating them 4 years in a row in the first round. Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl likely not going anywhere for the immediate future. Obviously, Draisaitl signed long-term. McDavid will get a new contract, whether it's 4 years, 8 years, we'll have to wait and see. But for the foreseeable future, those two guys aren't going anywhere. And the way the NHL playoff format is set up, the Kings have to go through those two teams to get to the Western Conference final, unless they are, can win the division and play a wild card. But still, the road before them is difficult, and they just don't have those superstar talents like Marner, like Eichel, like McDavid, like Draisaitl. So it's going to be very difficult. Hockey is very much a team game. It's not just about a couple of stars, but those big guns, those MVP caliber players certainly help a lot in the long run. So the Kings are trying to be competitive. They're going to spend to the cap. They've got a couple of young guys that they hope will take a next step in their development, particularly Quentin Byfield, who was a number 2 overall pick a few years back. They're going to need those guys to step up and become maybe those types of players or close to it. But the Kings they're there, they're getting in the playoffs, but unfortunately for them, they've run into an Edmonton team that's been pretty good the last few years, and they just can't get by them at the moment.
So I was curious because, watching this team the last couple of seasons, the things that were kind of going on the back of my head was a few things. Number one is that outside of Anze Kopitar and Drew Doughty, there were a couple of names that were obviously going to end up being moved. And that was at the time, Alec Martinez gets moved, Jeff Carter ends up getting moved, and then Tanner Pearson, and then even, Jonathan Quick. And to me, it seemed like the Kings were holding on to these guys, for quite some time until the actual youth movement started to help to refresh them to get them to where they are now and still building up for further and beyond. But when that timeline, right, did it seem like the Kings, they really needed to pivot in that direction? And we know that sometimes too with the draft is also one thing because you're getting the assets. You're also getting a lot of these, top prospects that will eventually become stars in the future and really help out a franchise. But it seemed like from that point forward and to where we are fast forwarding from now, I was happy at the time when they got Darcy Kemper because I was like, this is a goalie now that will help them to at least get the defenses, the goal, the shot blocks, and then at the same time, give them some of those, what were once losses for the Kings, now the wins to keep them rolling and then keep on building for a lot of their youth movement. But did it seem like that was the pivot at that point that the Kings knew that they needed to make and where we are right now, fast forwarding?
Well, I think most teams are guilty of this. We saw it with the Chicago Blackhawks. They won 3 titles in 6 years, and now they're in a situation where they're really having a tough time rebuilding. They've lost a lot of games. They've gotten the big draft pick, and it still they haven't even come close to turning a corner yet. So a lot of teams go through this. They hang on to those superstars, those Hall of Famers, maybe a little bit longer than they should. They had Patrick Kane, Jonathan Toews, Duncan Keith there, that core in Chicago. And it's hard to turn the page off of guys who are going to be future Hall of Famers. So every team has to go through it. And I think it'll be very interesting to see how the Florida Panthers handle it. They've won 2 in a row. They're bringing pretty much everyone back when a lot of people didn't think they would be able to bring guys like Aaron Ekblad, the defenseman, Sam Bennett, the playoff hero, the Conn Smythe Trophy winner, Brad Marchand, the veteran, coming back. They're all coming back again. So they're going to have a great chance to three-peat. But at some point, there will be a time where they'll have to decide when can we move off this or when do we try and stretch this out for as long as we can. No one's going to complain about it really in Florida. And look, when the Kings won their 2 cups in 3 years, Chicago with all the success they had, in that moment, their fans are like, look, we'll worry about down the road then. We're winning now. We're having success. Let's enjoy this party as long as we can. And there's plenty of other NHL teams which would have said, hey, we'd love to have 2 cups in 3 years or 3 cups in 6 years, There's still, you look at Vancouver, still never won a cup. Buffalo's never won a cup. Some of those franchises would die to have something like that. So, yeah, the Kings probably held on to things a little bit too long. Then they had to go through a rebuild. They kind of rebounded pretty quick. Maybe they would have benefited from building a little bit longer, but it's hard to not want to have success when you have a little bit of a taste of it and you think, well, maybe the rebuild's here a little bit, successful sooner than later. You get in the playoffs. It's good. It's a tough road right now, but every team goes through that. That's had a few seasons of high-end hockey or whatever the sport might be. And it's hard to move off of those guys that have been legendary players for you and helped you win championships.
So I got to say, man, because my family that live up in California, we're talking, up in NorCal and then all along the roads of just right there closest to Los Angeles. They would absolutely love this. They diehard Raider fans and especially too, some little bit of some Kings fans. I've got some good friends up in Hesperia, right up in on the Ontario area. But talk to me, man. That was definitely a party in the NHL draft, wasn't it? I mean, LA, you're up there in the big lights and just, you know, I've yet to actually see Crypto Arena now. I still will call it Staples Center. I don't care what anybody says, but to be there and then to just basically see, the atmosphere, even with some of the festivities. I mean, and then you watch a lot of these young players, whether down up in Orange County with Anaheim or you got the LA Kings themselves. I mean, that was quite a party and how the turnout really went from this past NHL draft.
Well, obviously, LA knows how to host events very, very well. And, it's not just necessarily about the hockey part of it, but it's about an experience for all these young guys coming to LA and getting to experience all the things that comes around with that, which is why places like LA will host certain events like that. And certainly there's the venues are all down there in downtown LA as well. So it was an interesting draft this year, though, because it was the first time they had the decentralized draft. It wasn't very popular for a lot of people. I don't know that they're going to return to it next year. The commissioner, Gary Bettman, was not a fan of it, but the teams voted for it 26-6. They tried it. It didn't go as well as they had hoped. I think they're going to return next year to all of the GMs, all of the scouting personnel, all gathering in one place, wherever it might be, instead of being like we see in the NFL, all the teams in their war rooms in their home, their home facilities. The NHL decided to try that like the other sports have been doing. It didn't seem to go over real well with the fans, didn't seem to go over real well with a lot of people. And it didn't seem like the improvements that they wanted to maybe have it be more streamlined, maybe have it be a little bit better of a TV event. It didn't really quite work out that way. Now you could say, well, it was the first time they tried it. There's things they can improve on it, but it seems like, and it was like, I was there. It was a good time. It's always great to be at those kind of events. It's great to see these young people, get to fulfill their dreams of being drafted. There's still that element is always going to be there, but I think I would be surprised if they have this same type of draft coming up next year.
I got to say, though, I absolutely loved, the two draft picks were one. You had, the cast of the Mighty Ducks. I thought that was an absolute classic. And then you bring up a special guest up in Happy Gilmore announcing Boston's pick. So it's like, if we could have, more of just those stars and more of just, that kind of moment up from there, I mean, I think it would just be an absolute party. And trust me, I would love to be absolutely there because I've only been to an all-star game festivity as originally born and raised up in Vegas. So I absolutely love the festivity. And I have yet to actually see an NHL draft festivity. I mean, I've been to an NFL draft, and that I thought was fantastic how they put it all together. So to be there up in an NHL draft, I think it would just be, once in a lifetime experience in itself. But one question before letting you go. So hockey's really pivoted in such an interesting way because unfortunately for the entire country of Canada, they got to wait another year until they finally break the curse of winning a Stanley Cup back in their home country. But for the U.S., they've been thriving for these last 30 years. And then, to see teams like Florida and what Gary Bettman, even preached upon was like, nobody was really paying attention a whole lot to Florida as much. And then you get the expansion up in Vegas. They win a cup in 6. And then, a bunch of the other teams also. I mean, seeing Colorado win a Stanley Cup themselves, after 20 years or so was just unbelievable for them. But I think the Four Nations tournament was fantastic. And it really kind of took a lot of breaths away. I really hope they do this more often. But we know that we've got the Olympics coming up the next year and where we're going to have a lot more stars participating up and in it. But is it safe to say? Because, I mean, I know Los Angeles, and it's hard even with the state of California where you have a state tax and even everywhere else around that's trying to compete in these CBAs and even with these tax thresholds. But even when you get Vegas and Florida, they got no state tax. I mean, it's kind of hard for other teams to really compete in that. So seeing just this whole entire change, I think the NHL is going to be in such great hands because Major League Baseball, I was having this same concern too. New rules, these contracts themselves, they're getting much, much more expensive, especially with the Juan Soto contract. But with NHL, I think we could really see a positive turn But is that going to be something that even for the entire country of Canada, they're going to need to end up making adjustments on their side if they really want to end up competing with a lot of these big teams that are here in the States?
Well, it's a good question. Certainly the tax rate in Canada is something that is a factor. I know that Gary Bettman, the commissioner, a lot of people that have been asked about this. Is this some sort of an advantage with state tax in Florida, places like Texas, Vegas? Is that an advantage for them? And they've really downplayed it a lot. Asked about maybe potential rule changes or changes, to try and make it a more balanced playing field. They have completely, dismissed it, that it is an advantage, and they have no desire at this point in time to do anything to change it. But I think it is a factor. I think it would be naive to say it's not a factor. I also don't know that it's completely a coincidence that, as you said, no Canadian team has won it since 1993, while we've had 4 Stanley Cup winners recently in the state of Florida. Now, granted, there were plenty of years where the Panthers and Lightning weren't very good and nobody cared about the state tax situation then. But now that they're winning and players see it's a great place to play, obviously you've got the weather, you've got all that, and you don't have to pay state income tax as well. I mean, Brad Marchand came out and said it. Is it a factor? Yes, it's a factor. Players do take that into consideration. Is it as big of a factor that there needs to be some sort of rule change or legislation to address it? The NHL at this point says no, but we'll see how much farther this thing goes before maybe they have to look into it.
Yeah, no, it's really going to be really interesting. And again, I was just like this. I'm like, we can only be so appreciative of there being no state tax in the state of Nevada, because I know at some point, I mean, the A's coming there. We've already had the Raiders, touchdown here. And then it's just like, at some point down. And especially with, political stances with even the legislatures and such, it's going to probably at some point change in the next few years, especially when you got new money involved. Things are starting to get, expensive, and somehow, some way, you got to be able to manage the monies right. So who knows? It might be really, really interesting down the road. But appreciate you for coming on by here, Eddie. Where can people find you for all of our audiences here to get them locked on the LA Kings all season long?
Yeah, well, if you are interested in the Los Angeles Kings at all, I do the podcast 5, sometimes 6 days a week, all year long. It's Locked On LA Kings, and please remember the LA part, or you might get an NBA team in Sacramento that's talking to you about some hoops. But Locked On LA Kings. I've also been a part of a weekly NHL podcast that's now in its 19th year, believe it or not. We were one of the longest running hockey podcasts around. It's called the Puck Podcast. I've done it for 19 years with one of my best friends, just talking NHL every week. So if anybody wants to get a weekly NHL show, they can check out the Puck Podcast as well. And just to keep in your memory bank, during the NHL season, I'm also co-host of a show called Locked On NHL Game Night. Wraps up the night in the NHL 7 days a week. So we'll be back once the NHL season starts up again in October.
Absolutely love it, man. I'm going to be locked into that, the up and coming season, man, because I just absolutely love hockey. I live here in Colorado now. We're almost going into the second year. So, of course, I got to deal with the Avs, but yet still, I got to rep up my hometown team in Vegas. And so I'm always going to be wanting to tuning into some hockey news and so much more up on it. So I will definitely be locked in on it. But appreciate you, Eddie. Have a great rest of your week. And by the way, happy 4th to you tomorrow. I know there's going to be lots of fireworks going to be blowing up here on a Friday, man. So be safe, enjoy, and we'll definitely see you soon here for the next up and coming season.
Yeah, well, if you like illegal fireworks, Los Angeles is the city for you, because it is unbelievable, the show that's puts on. The cities don't need to put on any shows. It's in everybody's street. You can just walk outside and see it all over the place. So yes, we'll be enjoying the fireworks here in Los Angeles.
There you go, my friend. Enjoy it, man. Appreciate you for coming on by.
All right, thank you.
Absolutely.